live. In the live stream, the door is open. In the live stream, shutting the door. In the live stream, because it's a live stream. Doing the stuffs and the things and the stuffs and the things in the live stream. Talking about the God and the not God. And the theisms and the atheisms and all the whatnots of the who-nots and the whatever we talk about on these live streams, because we never stay on topic, which is fine. In the live stream, because it's a live stream, because I at least am coming in with more structure with my streams, but still like to let chat take the wheel. Let chat decide what exactly we're talking about here. Good, very good. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Welcome and hello. It's a live stream. The live stream. Hope you're doing well tonight. How's your weekend? It was alright. My chair is broken. Can't really complain. Worked. What can you do? How was your weekend? And the live stream. My chair needs. It's only been this bad today. Have you ever been heartbroken? Oh yeah. It's a fantastic game. It's wonderful. 10 out of 10. Would not recommend. 10 out of 10 on how terrible it is. How do you get over someone? I'm not a licensed therapist, so I can't give you any kind of professional advice. But time is kind of the best way. Time. Just taking it day by day. Working on finding ways to move on even if you haven't moved on. Still doing things. Still continuing with your life. And continuing to move forward. And take it day by day. Work yourself through it if you need a licensed therapist. It's always a good option. But yeah, it's kind of the biggest thing. And there are some people you might not ever get over completely. But in time, you can heal to the point where it's not nearly as bad as it was. And you will smile again. You will laugh again. You will cry about other things. And keep living. That is kind of the best advice I have, personally. And sometimes that's dealing with any trauma in general. You know, any kind of psychological toll is just to keep it moving. Not like ignore it or anything, but, you know, just do whatever you can to get that forward motion. Or at the very least to avoid backward motion. Because sometimes progress is just sitting still for, you know, a day or two or however long you need. And that's all right. Just as long as you don't have any backwards motion. That's my opinion. My brief, unprofessional opinion on the subject. But is God speaking to us? And how do we know? How could we know if God is actually speaking to us, or which God, or what he's actually telling us, or how we can interpret what he's telling us? Is there a God giving us signs, guiding us throughout our day? Or are we just kind of going around, maybe unconsciously and unintentionally looking for signs? Are we attributing things that aren't signs to signs from a God? And how do you tell? Especially when there are multiple different gods. Hello. When there are multiple different gods out there. And multiple different people from different religions and different God beliefs who've claimed to have interactions with their various gods. So this person is saying, they've interacted with God. This person is saying they've interacted with Allah. This person is saying they've interacted with, this pagan deity or whatever. How do you know? How do you tell who's right? And then there's even people who believe that they are having some kind of connection or interaction with a god. And then, I don't know what those emojis are. Believe they're having an interaction with the Christian God. I mean, multiple different people can believe that they're having interactions with the Christian God, but this God is telling them different things, giving them different information. So is God trolling, giving mixed messages, or what? And especially in a world where we have no good evidence for anything supernatural or divine, which is more likely? That this thing that we can't prove exists is speaking to us, or that it's something in our head. It's our head voice, or it's our confirmation bias, or it's us unconsciously looking for signs. Because you can take anything as a sign. That's part of the reason why end-time prophecies are so trash. Because the end-time prophecies in the Bible are so ambiguous, they're so open to interpretation, to the point where anything can be taken as a sign, and anything has been taken as a sign. For generations and generations and generations, people have been saying, oh, this is a sign of the end times, this is a fulfillment of that prophecy, and then, we're the last generation, and then they're not, and then the next generation does the same thing. And they'll say, oh, yeah, we thought that was the mark of the beast, but really, this is the mark of the beast. And sometimes it happens multiple different times in a generation. It happens multiple different times in my generation, where I don't know how many different things have been attributed to, the mark of the beast. Are they all the mark of the beast? Or none of them are the mark of the beast? Because it's just broad and ambiguous, and anything can be taken as a sign for anything if you really stretch your mind. Because it's just how human brains work. That's one of the reasons we have so many disagreements when it comes to Christianity in the Bible. You have about as many denominations of Christianity as you have people who believe in Christianity. Because you have these different denominations of people who believe in the Christian God, supposedly, but believe in it in some kind of at least minutely different way. They believe, he wants this thing different, or he has this difference in his personality or his being or whatever. And then you have, just their own take, their own version of the Christian God. And then you have people within each of those denominations, each with a slightly varying interpretation of their God, usually based on the denomination, but still at least slightly varying. Because people just take and interpret and move things around in the brain however they will. And the Bible doesn't help, because the Bible can absolutely be a sock puppet or a choose-your-own-adventure book. You can open the Bible, it's pretty much any passage, and make some kind of sign out of it that may or may not actually be some kind of sign from something. Hello. So how do you know? How do you know at the end of the day that God is speaking to you? And that it's specifically the God that you believe in? Like, how do you know that you're being spoken to by some supernatural being? How do you know which being? How do you know what they're saying? How can you confirm any of it? Especially when a much better explanation would be, it's just you. It's just your head voice, or you interpreting things in a way that perhaps they don't need to be interpreted. We love connecting dots. We love finding patterns. We love attributing meaning to things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're always good at it. And so it becomes a problem. So at the end of the day, who's to say? And who's to know? It doesn't seem to me like anyone's really... I have no reason to believe anyone's ever really interacted with any kind of supernatural being. There's another cat at the door. But who knows? I could be wrong. I could always be wrong. But if I am wrong, what's going on? Because I'm not completely wrong. Because we do have different people who, one, are interacting with different gods. So what's going on there? So if, say, the Christian God is interacting with people, all right, so what's going on with the guy who's talking to Allah over there? Or even if you have multiple different Christians, each believing that they're talking to the Christian God, but getting, different answers and different interpretations, what's going on. And you can say, well, Satan is deceiving people, and Satan is the one talking to them. But a lot of the times when you hear something like that, it just so happens that the person saying it happens to have the one right way of viewing things, and everything else is just wrong. How do we tell which one is God, and therefore all of the others are people being deceived by Satan? Or is God just trolling us? Or in the sea of people who are somehow getting things wrong, either because it's just their brain, doing brain stuff, interpreting things like in the way that perhaps they shouldn't be interpreted, or because it's Satan tempting everyone. How do we find like the one person who's got it right, or this relatively small percentage of people who's got it right? How could you possibly know that? So even if I'm wrong and there's a God and he's talking to people, I'm not entirely wrong, because it would seem that the vast majority of people, 99% of the population at least, are still talking to the wrong God, or being deceived, or using their head voice. Taylor's being attacked by a cat. It's actually adorable.
Oh.
Smokey just jumped up on her back and started clawing at her hair. Smokey
She loves wet hair.
She loves wet hair. I don't even know if you're in the camera.
I am.
Okay. Smokey loves wet hair, fresh out of the shower. And so she just sees it and just like goes and attacks. I don't know what it is.
I took my towel off my head and she just...
Abrahamic faiths aren't uniform. People make up their own interpretations, argue with each other on which is correct, and asked about their God. No one knows, and they alone has the correct faith. Yeah, nobody knows. And it's a big question that I even from like a theist perspective, like this isn't even like me necessarily. Obviously, I'm leaning more towards the atheist perspective, but also it's important for a theistic perspective. How do you know? Say if you're a Christian, you believe in a God, how do you know that you're following and hearing and listening to God and not being deceived by Satan? Because the odds are not in your favor, when almost every single person seems to be getting an at least slightly different answer and response and guidance from the same being. What are we doing? How do we figure this stuff out? It's not a problem I've been able to solve. Because even, when I try to switch to my theist brain, and try to look at it more philosophical or on more of a spiritual level, still can't really figure it out. How do you know that any supernatural being is speaking to you? How do you know that the right supernatural being is speaking to you? How do you know what they're saying? How do you know you're getting it right? I don't understand how you could possibly know that, but you got a lot of people walking around who are very, 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 very confident that their particular flavor of this particular God is the correct one, and everyone else is wrong. And I never really know what to do with that, because there are a lot of people who are like, there's no denominations of Christianity. There's just, my Christianity, and everyone else is wrong. Okay, well, if everybody is saying that, if all these other people are saying that, then now what? I have, 2 million people. I'm just spitting out a random number. I got 2 million people saying I have Christianity, and everybody else just says they're following Christianity, but they're not actually following Christianity. They're wrong, and they're all saying it about each other. How in the world can I possibly figure out which one is correct? I don't know what that was. My religion? I don't have one. Hello. Yeah, I am an atheist. So I don't have a religion. But I try not to be an atheist in the terms of like, the theists are dumb. Why you're there just, in your imagination. No, I try to be like, hey, I disagree. Let's talk about it. Why though? Why am I an atheist? I have no reason to believe in a God. I have no reason to believe in anything supernatural, but that's not necessarily atheism. Atheism is just lacking belief in a God, and I lack belief in a God, so I have no reason to believe in it. Prove to me why atheism is true. I don't have to do that. So the default position on pretty much any claim is not believing in it. If somebody's putting forth a claim that there is a God, they have the burden of proof to prove that there is a God. The reason I don't believe in a God is just because I have no reason to believe that there is one. That's it. That's my proof. It's this claim that there is a God has not met its burden of proof. That's it. That's all it is. So a better thing for me to ask would prove to me that there is a God. So how we get here? I mean, we know some of the pieces, you know. Most of us got here because two people did the sideways beat bop, and, you know, 9 months later we popped out. And we can track that, you know, generation.
Still just love the sentence.
Sideways beat bop. We have experiments like the Miller-Urey experiment, where elements from the periodic table were put in a jar, and it was heated up, cooled down, frozen, you know, electrocuted, all these shaken, all these different natural things, and those elements on the periodic table self-assembled themselves into amino acids, into the building blocks of proteins, which build us up. So we have little bits and pieces, you know. The planets were made from the leftover bits after the sun was made, after our star was made. The universe, at least our current representation of the universe, seems to have started by the Big Bang or the Big Expansion, but there's a lot of holes. But just because we don't know how this stuff got here, that doesn't mean it has to have been a God. That's called the God of the gaps fallacy, and it does not work. I've had an out-of-body experience where I've seen my body lying on the floor. So a lot of people have had those, and they've even run some tests on them. It seems like it's just more of a dream state and not actually an out-of-body experience. And so that's where studies have tended to lean towards. Like, people will put a note up on a shelf somewhere. And it's like, all right, you know, if you had an out-of-body experience, or if we can trigger this quote-unquote out-of-body experience, the other person comes back and it's like, hey, we wrote that note up there. What the note say? None of them could say see what the note said. It's just our brain, especially a brain, you know, as you're dying, you know, and near-death experiences are a whole different thing. Deprived of oxygen, panicking, doing all kinds of crazy things. But out-of-body experiences aren't necessarily that, but does seem to be just more of a dream state thing. Who made the blueprint? How do you know it's a who? Nature just randomly made our complex bodies. How do you know it could have happened to any other way? I don't have any other universe to compare of like how things could have been. As far as I know, this is exactly how the universe just works. And we're just a product that came from the universe. It's the puddle analogy. I don't know if you're familiar with that. You know, I didn't skip any. Okay, but acids have to come from somewhere. Yes, from basic elements on the periodic table. Day one, God created the moon and the stars. I don't think that's the order in Genesis. The term God is misinterpreted? Okay. There is someone or something outside of space and time that created us. How do you know that? Explain the limitations of physics then. It's just how the universe works. Just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it has to have been a God. It's just how the universe works. Not necessarily by design, but just how the universe works. The properties of the universe. Not necessarily laws of the universe, not necessarily in a way where some being set it up to where like it can only work this way, but laws of the universe, and just like this is just how the universe works. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the puddle analogy, but it can also be useful in this. Why? Why what? Why are we here? Why something instead of nothing? What's a puddle analogy? So the puddle analogy, so say there's a pothole in a road and it rains and the pothole fills up with water. Now say that that water in that pothole creates a little puddle. Say that it gains sentience. Now that puddle might think, wow, look at this nice little hole. I fit perfectly into this hole. It was made perfectly designed for me. Therefore, something designed it specifically for me. Therefore, I got someone up there taking care of me. And no matter what happens, I'm going to be taken care of. I'm going to be good. Even though the sun comes out and it starts to dry up and shrink and shrink and shrink, it still thinks, no, it's fine. Because look, this hole was it fits me perfectly. This hole was obviously made with me in mind, for specifically me. And it's going to keep that mindset until, much to its surprise, it evaporates completely and disappears. So the puddle analogy is relevant here because was the universe made with us in mind? Or are we just a product of the universe? Was that hole designed for the puddle? Or when the water poured into that hole, did it just take the shape of the hole? Question about the event Babylon exile it affected Judaism, causing Judaism to be anti-polytheistic. It didn't happen to two other faiths, yet Christianity and Islam adopted anti-polytheistic and anti-paganism. Yeah? Okay, so what are the chances, sorry, my brain short-circuited. What are the chances that they found swords and shields, helmets and chariots at the bottom of the Red Sea? In the Bible, Moses parts the Red Sea and then collapses on the Egyptians. So I've seen those TikTok videos too. I would steer away from them. There's a little bit more to that. There's no evidence whatsoever from what I've seen of any kind of exodus, mass exodus from Egypt. So some of that, because I see, and maybe this isn't where you got it, so that might not be fair to you. But I see a lot of people, oh, they found Noah's Ark, it's in this rock formation, even though it's not Noah's Ark, it's just a rock formation. Oh, they found, they found a Moses' tomb in Egypt. It's an unmarked tomb, there's no reason to believe that it was for Moses. But it's just these videos, and sometimes they just make shit up. Sometimes it is based on actually something like, hey, there's this tomb, it's crazy. Sometimes it is just like, hey, there's this tomb and there's absolutely no tomb there. So I would just be careful with that. Could there be chariots and shields and swords in the Red Sea near Egypt? Sure, but not to the extent that you think. Puddles just didn't randomly get there. That's the life cycle, though. So there's no perfect analogy. It's not really meant to explain, like, the water cycle or anything. I don't think they found any equipment in the Red Sea. I don't think they did either. There are no artifacts or other archaeological suggesting people were trapped in the Red Sea. That claim is perpetuated by a shill named Ron Wyatt. Also, it wouldn't even be evidence of the sea parting. Yeah. Hi, how's it going? I'm doing all right. How are you? They didn't find Moses' tomb. God himself buried him. Yeah, that's all the more reason to not trust some of these, like, TikTok shorts that you see of people. Like, they found it's Moses' tomb. It's one more nail in the coffin. We control the universe with our actions. Whole point of free will. We have some kind of effects on the world we live in, and depending on how far we can reach, we've launched space junk into space, so we can. And if we were able to travel the entire universe, then yeah, we could go around and mess up with the entire universe. But controlling it with our actions is a bit of a stretch. We do have an impact on it to some limited extent, but controlling it, not quite sure. Whole point of free will, I don't know. At least it's not brain rot. But this is like the level that Stranger Things fans theory is like. Honestly, though, kind of. Not trying to be rude or offensive. You're good in any way. But how do you explain the rivers turning to blood then? What river is turning to blood? How do you suppose we got here? Revelations, rivers turn to blood, and it happened already. Look it up. It's fascinating. So did they turn to blood, or was it like minerals or something in the water? Is that another TikTok video, or is there actually something there? If you believe in the Bible, you believe that every single occurrence in this universe was known by God beforehand, meaning each and every action we take is predetermined. Perhaps. Turned blood red. It's news. They turned blood red is different than it turned into blood. There are minerals and stuff that can turn water red. I'm pretty sure there's a phenomenon of pollution causing them to turn red. Did happen, but it still isn't blood. Yeah, there's a lot of things, natural and unnatural. Natural minerals and stuff, and pollution can do it too. So that's kind of the thing, you know. It's this weird thing happened. Okay, let's investigate it. Let's talk about it. You know, but Revelation said it would turn to blood. Look, the river's red, blood red. Blood red, sure. Blood, no. It's okay. None of us can spell. It turned to blood spiritually or metaphorically, whatever's convenient, perhaps. I think people are just scared of death and latch onto anything having to do with some greater being or place that offers some peace of mind. Some people are like that, and I can understand it. Death is pretty scary. You know, the idea of ceasing to exist is like pretty not fun, not gonna lie. I would like there to be an afterlife or some kind of like higher being or something. Personally, you know, call me weird or whatever. I would like if that was the case. Maybe not, you know, any of the gods that have been presented, but like, you know, something that's not ceasing to exist. You know, if I can just like cast my vote, you know, personally. What prophecies are currently being fulfilled? So out of all the stars and planets, we just got lucky with consciousness and life. How do you know we got lucky? No, death's not scary, just the beginning. Well, if it is a new beginning or whatever, then yeah, it's not scary. But if it is the end, it is scary. Who's to say we got lucky? Who's to say this isn't just a natural process of the universe? Who's to say it's not happening other places in the universe? There is, I promise. Okay, what prophecy is coming true? Hello. The life you live determines your afterlife, no single God. It'd be cool if that was the case. I'd be down for it. But, you know, why should we believe that? You can say any old thing is the fulfillment of the prophecy. I rode a donkey once. I have partially fulfilled Isaiah 53. I will accept your worship now. Yeah, it's like some of y'all might have missed it later. But the end time prophecies are way too vague and open to interpretation. Generations and generations and generations have passed of people thinking that they were the last generation, they were living in the end times, because this event was the fulfillment of this prophecy, and this event was the fulfillment of this prophecy, and then they weren't the last generation, and the next generation did the same thing. I'm 28 years old, and I've lost count of how many times in my lifetime people have said, this is the mark of the beast. No, that wasn't the mark of the beast. This is the mark of the beast. No, that wasn't the mark of the beast. This is the mark of the beast. It's the boy who cried wolf, and it's just people trying to plug vague, you know, prophecies into actual things, because you can get a sign out of pretty much anything. You can interpret pretty much anything as some kind of a sign, oftentimes with little effort. So that's really just what we have going on here, it seems. I do not watch Nick Fuentes. Humans make mistakes. Humans do make mistakes, I agree. I think you are in denial that the Lord is trying to say something to you. Sure. How can you sit there and say there isn't a God? Look into the sky day or night. I have. I love looking at the sky. What does that do for us? How can you say there is no God? I'm not saying definitively. I'm just saying I don't have any reason to believe there is one. How do you describe healing, say from cancer? Some people mixed. We don't use those words.
Mom mixed, you know.
I'm sorry. How do you describe healing, say from cancer? People recover from cancer. Sometimes the body's able to overcome it and fix things, and sometimes it's not. Seek truth and you will find, my guy. I am seeking truth, so let's do it. God is within, okay? Any disease. Instantly. There is rapid remission of diseases. Like in an altar. Has anyone gone to an altar and gotten that kind of... I don't really believe in the faith healing churches. Most of them, a lot of them have been demonstrated to be scams, and the rest of them, I'm pretty sure, are scams. Our development is due to generations of genetic mutations acted on by natural selection. Yes, once we got life, as life evolved. That's how evolution by means of natural selection works. We chose to be here for a reason. What makes you get up and love and feel? We choose to be here for a reason. What makes you get up and love and feel? Because life's a little bit better when you're doing that. This is the only life I know I get, so I'm kind of trying to make the most out of it. Also, the Bible states not to rely on your own understanding. You can't trust everything on the internet, so saying that God is at fault or our mistakes and lies spread across the internet. Saying God is at fault for our mistakes and lies spread across the internet. Yeah, I know the Bible puts in fail-safes like that, like lean not on your own understanding. Don't trust, these philosophical, philosophers. Something else. Don't trust, don't listen to these people. It's got a lot of patches built in of hey, eyes forward. Don't look at that. Don't look at that. Don't trust that. They're wrong. That's demons. Don't talk about that. Eyes forward. Oh, they're following another god. That's demons. Other practices, pagan practices, demons. Eyes forward. It's just a little controlling failsafe built into the Bible. And God is responsible for everything. If there was nothing before he got here, and then he made everything, he's responsible for everything. Why can't we talk about actual topics that plague our society? All those kids that got vaporized by atom bombs or died of starvation just didn't have God's favor. Egyptians, everyone knew it's the 1 in a million guy from Utah with access to modern medicine God truly loves. Yeah. God does not originate within. Ignore that nonsense. Well, there are people who believe that God can be found within, which is actually the topic of this live. I went on a whole spiel the first 10-15 minutes. How do you know God is speaking to you? Because there are a bunch of different religions, each with people thinking that they have some kind of interaction with their particular God, but they're different gods. So who's right? Who's actually, this person's saying they're talking to the Christian God. This person's saying they're talking to Allah. This person says they're talking to this pagan God. Who's right and how do we know? And even within the religions, we have multiple different Christians claiming to have some kind of interaction relationship with a God, with the Christian God specifically. But they're getting different answers for things. They're being told different things. So who's right and how do we know? Is there a God actually interacting with people and maybe giving confusing messages? Or is it just people, using their head voice, using their imagination, interpreting things as signs? You can interpret anything as a sign for anything. Is Satan, messing with a bunch of people? If so, who's the one person out of billions that has it right, and how do you know? It's an issue. True, Jesus died for our sins, so we may repent and get right with God. Yeah, God sacrificed himself to save the world from a system he created that went wrong with a situation in a garden that was absolutely his fault. And then he got back up a couple days later like nothing happened, walked around, let people stick their fingers in his wounds like it was a party trick, and then skipped back up to eternal bliss in heaven. He's fine. It wasn't really a sacrifice. It was more of I see it as more of an egotistical, look at me, look what I did for you display, even though he didn't actually do anything. I was referencing my comment. Yeah, we don't need to talk about that stuff. Only way to connect with him is going within, not praying to someone. Yeah, but then how do you know you're actually talking to him? There's a problem Gen Z struggles with greatly? Maybe. Hello. How is God responsible for everything? You say that, as if Satan, demons, and human beings aren't a thing. Who created them? God doesn't control everything, gives Satan, demons, and humans free will. Who created them? God was 100% man, 100% God, so he felt the pain. And that's great. You know, I'm not trying to downplay how much suffering the dude must have gone through in that day or two. But when you have eternal bliss in paradise, 30 years of just like, you know, okay, you know, some rockiness, especially towards the end, and then like a day or two of terribleness, and then back up to eternal paradise, you're fine. You're fine, you know? I don't believe in God, but I do believe that care, empathy, and positive intentions can have a real positive effect on people. I can agree. Life is but a vapor. Eternity is forever. Maybe. But how do we know there's something more? How can we possibly know? We don't understand how much pain was in that time. You're right. I'm not, like I said, I'm not downplaying. This chair is so squeaky. It's only today. It wasn't this squeaky before today. It's driving me crazy. I need to spray it down with WD-40 after this. Anyway, I'm not downplaying the pain that he must have been in, but eternal God being, dude for 30 years, suffering immensely. We can even say the worst suffering ever. Back up to eternal paradise. 2 days, a day and a half, 2 days after he went through all this suffering, he was walking around like nothing happened. He let someone stick their fingers in his wounds like it was a party trick, and then he skipped back up to eternal paradise. Not what I would call a sacrifice. You don't need to talk to him. You literally have a piece of him. You make decisions in your own free will, but deep down you know what's right and what's wrong without anyone needing to tell you. But what if people's conscious, their right and wrong sense deceives them? What if there's two people that disagree on what's right and wrong? Again, yes, he created them. He also gave them free will. And that's why that's what you're talking about. What you believe on the internet. You have free will. See, I'm not just like following whatever those random atheists on TikTok say, you know, because half of them at least are trash. Theists too. But what I am saying is, God created. You said it right there. God created. So we can justify it however we want. We can compare it to the alternative. We can do, you know, whatever. But at the end of the day, when there was nothing, and then God created everything, God is ultimately responsible for everything. It's written on a heart, Drew. But what about when people's hearts disagree? Persecution, humiliation, physical pain. I'm not going to keep repeating myself. I'm not downplaying the suffering that he went through in those day or two. Going within is common to Buddhist and Eastern thought. The premise is you are God. Feel free to explore it. But it is an empty idea. I kind of like the Eastern religions better myself, but it's still don't believe there's anything there. It's the sacrifices by surrender, sure. Again, yes, he created them. He also gave them free will. And that's why what you're talking about, you believe on the internet, you have free will. I mean, you just repeated the same thing, and I'm not going to repeat the same thing. You literally are saying he created, he gave. These are actions he took. Pride says don't surrender. I think that's a dumb thing to go by. Surrender if you have reason to. Know when it's time to surrender. I hate people. Whenever I try to talk about valid issues, I just get shut down. We don't need to talk about that stuff on the live. Would you willingly die for your worst enemy? I don't know. Depends on the situation, I guess. I think we'd all like to think that in like a life or death situation, we would take a bullet for anyone. But frankly, we don't really know the answer until we're put in that situation. So I don't have a good response to that. I would like to believe that I would be the better man in that situation and take a bullet for anyone and sacrifice myself, but actually put me in that situation, and I don't know what the result would be. Is your consciousness, it's your conscious, right from wrong. But what about when people's consciences disagree? I don't believe no single one religion to be true. I feel like they're all pieces to a puzzle. Maybe. Did God create Satan and evil? Did he know how it would play out? Did he have to make it that way? Then how the fuck is it not his fault? Because some of us were created for damnation. Yeah. Science is proof of God's existence. How so? So what you're saying, God shouldn't have created anything. It's like a movie. If a movie has bad guys or some henchmen, should he have created that movie at all? That's not what I said at all. I said we can justify it and we can compare it to the alternative, but at the end of the day, if there was nothing and he created everything, he is now responsible for that everything that he created. Pride says don't surrender. Again, that's terrible advice. That's what God did, sure. I would die for anyone. Jesus died for us. I mean, according to the story, we don't really have verification that that's actually what happened. Not a bullet, willingly beating behind a little bit on chat. If you don't have a reason to believe in God, why are you on YouTube posting about what you believe in? I'm very passionate about religion. I'm very weird. I just like talking about it and learning about it and discussing it. I also think that religion has caused a great deal of harm and continues to do so. And it's a very hot topic. It controls how a lot of people act, how they behave, how they vote, which then affects everyone's life, not just, their own lives. So it's a big, important thing to talk about. And it's also, again, like number one reason, I'm just really passionate about religion. I'm just kind of a nerd about it, so I like talking about it. I'm just weird like that. That's number one. In your heart, your conscience doesn't agree. Are you sure about that? Stoked that you are pondering Jesus, even if just to critically analyze, he is listening, and man, he is so patient and loves you so much. Keep going. Sweet. I'm waiting for it. No, because their God is just a man that's playing Minecraft. Maybe. Logic is not faith, I would agree. God didn't predestine anyone for heaven or hell. That was free will. Yeah, but he created people knowing full well that they would end up in hell. And Jesus even says that most people are going to end up in hell. And he's still just kind of like kept it cranking out. And that's the default. We're going to end up in hell. He puts us on this conveyor belt going into this hell, bad place. And he's like, I'll take you off the conveyor belt if you do X, Y, and Z. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave you on this default conveyor belt. What they call free will is the brain evaluating options based on genetics, past experience, and current context. There's nothing there that requires God. Perhaps. I'm living testimony, okay? I'm trying to get cut back up in chat. Religion is not a relationship, sure. I don't know what that word is. I don't know what that word is. Faith isn't easy. If faith was easy, it wouldn't be much faith. Faith is an unreliable path to the truth. You can have faith in anything. I can have faith that this water bottle is going to turn into a unicorn one day and carry me off to Valhalla. People use faith to justify all kinds of different contradictory things. So it's what you put as a reason when you don't have any actual reason to believe. I was once dead and am alive. Spiritual. Cool. Good morning, everyone. How are you doing, bro? I'm doing all right. Struggling to keep up with chat. I'm not a Christian. Hi, I got to the bottom of chat. I caught up. No, Jesus is the true bright and morning star. Sure. How? I follow Jesus. Christianity is a mockery. You follow Jesus. Christianity is a mockery. So you are a Christian. You are a follower of Christ. That makes you a Christian. You can be one of those people who says, I have the right version of Christianity and all other versions are wrong, but you are still a follower of Christ. It's basically what Christianity boils down to. Extra messages to make you fall behind. No, because it slowed down, chat stopped, so your message did nothing. It was ineffective. Now there's a world called Christianity, because everyone has the wrong version except for you, right? This chair is making me lose my mind. Spreading love and kindness to all humans. That's what I call it faith. God bless you all. Sure. Sounds like a good way to be. Spreading love and kindness to all humans. I'm down. How many of those shirts do you have? Just wondering. Halloween shirts? That's a good question. I think it's at least 10. I think around 10. Final answer. Like, it's around 10. 11 for some reason sticks into my brain. But over the past like few Halloweens, I have added to my collection with the intention of being able to wear a Halloween shirt every day of the year. And 99% of the time I am wearing a Halloween shirt because I love Halloween. Place your faith in your water bottles to carry you to Valhalla. You'll find it fails. If and when you place your faith in Jesus, you will find solid rock beneath your feet. How do you know that? Religion is just a way to separate us. We are all biologically made up of the same things. I can agree. Dang. Oh, with the Halloween shirts? Yeah. World leadership says they're Christian, but we know by their fruits they are of their father, the devil. Yeah, I mean, even by like any definition, any decent definition of Christianity I have, a lot of the world leaders I see who claim to be Christian ain't it. So like I would agree with you there. I don't believe in the devil or whatnot, but I'm on the same page as you there. So you believe that nothing happens to us after we die? I believe that a lot of things happen. I just believe that we're not necessarily a part of it anymore. I believe that the best explanation for consciousness, thoughts, feelings, memories, stuff like that, is chemical reactions in the brain. And when we die, those chemical reactions stop. They'll just kind of go away. I like to compare it to a projector and a projection. When the projector stops, breaks, turns off, whatever, the projection just kind of goes away. So essentially, from our perspective, we essentially cease to exist. Perilous times coming, so I follow Jesus. Cool. I don't know what happens when you die. No one does. Yes, and if they say they do, they're lying. I would agree. Well, lying or just incorrect. Because I don't think it's lying if you're genuinely wrong. Like if I genuinely tell you, if I am convinced that behind this bookcase there is a pink monster, genuinely convinced, and I'm telling you there's a pink monster, I'm not lying to you. I'm just wrong. Now, if I know that there's not a pink monster behind this, and I'm telling you that there is a pink monster, then I'm lying. Solid rock beneath your feet. Clearly, this is about our Lord and Savior, Doug the Rock, by his igneous grace and strata of our salvation is firm and stony. Yes. I feel like Christianity shouldn't be debating someone, but trying to help them find the right mindset to have. What are your thoughts? What do you think is more helpful? I definitely like going at this from more of a I disagree, let's talk about it type of perspective. Debates, especially structured like formal debates, I don't really feel like get anywhere. Just kind of open-minded sharing of ideas, I think is a good way to go. And yeah, trying to find the right mindset to have. Obviously, we're going to disagree on what that right mindset is, and that's where the conversations and debates, because the conversations about this stuff are always going to bleed into debates. But I like to have it, just more sitting at the same table, open-minded conversation is kind of how I like to have my discussions or debates about this topic. Yes, there's no afterlife directly after we die. From dust we came, and to dust we'll return. Sure. Just share. God doesn't necessarily speak, okay? I know because I have placed my faith in him, and nothing can move me. His power sits behind my every action and transforms me. Hard to explain, but it's real. That was me the first 20 plus years of my life, so I know the feeling. I had sleep paralysis. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't move. I thought, Jesus, help, and I've not had it since. I stopped having sleep paralysis when I stopped believing in demons, funny enough. Have you ever fasted or meditated for long periods of time? Depends on long periods. The most I've ever done with fasting is I was raised Catholic, so like Lent, we would do some fasts where you can have 3 meals a day, 2 small and 1 large, and the 2 small ones can't be larger than the large one or something like that, and no snacks. I think that's the most I did. I still did throw a snack in there here and there because I have blood sugar issues, so I can't like just starve myself or I'll die. Meditation, I've spent at least an hour. I mean, it was regular for me to spend at least an hour on meditating. I don't know exactly what my record is, but hour-ish, if you consider that long periods of time. Unless reincarnation is true, since that's the boy who recalled these... I'm sorry, the chair squeaked and I lost my train. Unless reincarnation is true, since there's that boy who recalled these accurate descriptions of a family in a house on a small island. Yeah, those are always weird. I think it's just kids' imagination. And, I mean, how many different people and how many different families have lived? So if I could tell you, there was this family with a mom and a dad and 2 kids that lived in a red house in Kansas. Sometime in the last probably 100 or 200 years, there was a family of 4 living in a red house in Kansas. You know, it's just kind of how it is. And a lot of those stories aren't even verified. So it could just be like someone making something up and then they didn't verify. Or especially once you get older, somebody could think they have memories of a whole different life, but they actually don't. They just like heard about it and then their imagination took off. Sometimes our brain isn't wired correctly and someone might actually be convinced that they have memories of this other life, even if they don't. It can be a whole thing. But we have to repent, for we have all sinned. Your conscience bears testimony. Sure, reincarnation is a pretty theoretical thing at this point. It's most likely real. I disagree, but I'd be down for it. All spirits return to the Father as spirits. Okay. To lie is sin. Okay. I mean, to dust we came, to dust we shall go. Could we come back from dust? Maybe. It's impossible to not lie if you understand the nature of attraction and language. Maybe. Oh, I'm behind on chat. Some of what you're saying is true. Most of it makes sense, just not what I believe. But if God created the universe, then he is very powerful. So why don't you believe in him? I don't have any reason to believe in him. Doug, Heavenly Father, I pray you help these misguided children. I'm gonna scroll past that just because I'm not gonna spend time reading the meme. I don't lie. Cool. Behold an Israelite in whom is no deceit. Okay. Absolute truth is non-linguistic. Okay. Logic is not faith. Okay. He is very powerful. What reason do you have to not believe in him? If you have a dad and he was way more powerful than you, what reasons do you have to not call him dad? If I have a dad, I've met my dad. I've interacted with my dad. I have, if we did DNA tests, it could probably connect me to my dad. We have none of that for God. I have evidence that my dad exists and that I came from him. Therefore, I told you the truth, it would be a lie. Reincarnation is barely better than hell. Christ promises freedom and peace with God in this lifetime. Once you know about him, you will not be satisfied with working out your karma over lifetimes. I don't really mind reincarnation, personally. That's foolishness. I don't know what you're talking about. The one who has faith thinks I believe in the unspeakable absolute because I understand it. Okay, the one who has faith believes is both you think you believe. I got to the bottom. It's both you think and believe. Somebody called me out for like skipping chats in one of my last live streams. Like, you're not even trying. You know what? All right, I'll try. We're gonna speed read through these chats to the best of my ability. If it's real, it can take the pressure. Maybe Jesus is better than reincarnation. I agree. I don't know if I agree, but I just kind of like the Eastern religions better. Like, not that I would like dedicate my life to them, but like I kind of like them better. Studying Buddhism helped me learn how to manage my anxiety better and help me fall asleep at night. So it has improved my life and improved the lives of those around me, because when you're not anxious and sleep deprived, you're usually a more pleasant person to be around. Did we talk about Simon's son already? No. Yes, but your dad in heaven, aka God, sorry, he has given you life, and if you say your parents did, he created your parents too, could have killed them, and you would have ceased to exist. Okay, but how do I know that God's real and did these things? It's not about what's better, it's about what is reality. I agree. I don't believe any of them are reality. I don't think we have any reason to believe that any of them are reality. Because you won't surrender. Because I won't give up. Because I won't give up thinking and just throw myself into blind faith to a religion I have no reason to believe in. Pride comes before destruction. It's not pride. It's just lack of evidence. Lack of belief based on lack of evidence. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. There's another fail-safe in the Bible. You know, someone who doesn't believe in a God, they're a fool. Don't listen to them. It's another fail-safe to keep people eyes forward on God. He's just trying to understand. I am trying to understand. I've been where he is. See? I could be a Christian one day. Hell, I could be a Christian now. Maybe I'm just doing this to test all of your guys' faith. You don't know what I got. I have also, and I've been in your guys' position. I was a devout Christian the first 20 plus years of my life. Look outside at the stars, that's him for sure. And maybe you know God is real, but like, I mean, he's all powerful and amazing. Bible makes you life better and keeps you away from sin. Yeah, following the Bible keeps you away from the Bible's definition of sin. Sure. Why should I believe that any of that was made by God? I don't really believe that everything in the Bible is the best to go off of, to live off of. So, I don't know. God is beyond all religions? I would agree. Why wouldn't you want to? I'm sorry, why wouldn't I want to? What? I'm rambling about a lot of things. Which one are we talking about? We know by your fruits. Sure. God is the unified field theory of everything. Maybe. Yeah, dude, you are doing great. I don't see pride in you, Padawan. Just curiosity and desire to know the truth. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm going for, honestly. Blinded by the counterfeit light bearer? Maybe. In the Gospels, a man named Simon, who was a random passerby, is forced to carry the cross of Jesus when he's being crucified. One of the Gospels mentions Simon's son specifically. Why do they do this? So it was a him. I don't know. What were you saying, Josiah? Why wouldn't I want to? Why wouldn't I want to what? Physical light and spiritual light are two different forces. Sure. Why wouldn't you want to follow him? I mean, we're nearing the end of the live stream. That's a whole different can of worms that I don't really like arguing about because it doesn't really go anywhere. But I do think the God of the Bible is an egotistical, manipulative monster who supports things like child abuse, slavery, misogyny, and genocide. And that's a whole different discussion, and it's just throwing Bible verses at each other, and it's not going to go anywhere. So, like, if you disagree, sure. I don't really feel like pressing that, especially since we are nearing the end of the live stream. Yeah, I'll take the L. I'm wrong. You know, I'm wrong. I'm wrong about everything in the Bible. I'd rather do that than have just that discussion right now. But that's just why I don't believe. Viewers pierced for our transgressions. Don't discount Bible prophecy as evidence. So internal biblical prophecies don't really do anything for me. It's something happened in chapter 1, and then somebody else who wrote chapter 3, and I know it's not like 1 and 3, but earlier in the book, and somebody later in the book who was writing the book later on, with knowledge of what happened earlier in the book, wrote down that something happening later in the book. It doesn't mean it actually happened. And especially when you have over time people tampering with the Old Testament to tweak and to shoehorn things in there that weren't originally in there, like some prophecies and whatnot, the internal prophecies really just fall apart. There are spectrums beyond the physical that is called the some-quantum realities. Maybe. Involves higher dimensional structures. Maybe. Have a good day, Drew. God loves you, and so do I. You're a great person. I have to go. Love to talk with you. Have a great night, day. Yeah, I'd love to see you again. Thank you for stopping by. You had some good questions and stuff. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights are when I go live, so I'd be happy to see you. The 5th dimension, the 6th dimension, and the 9th Hilbert spaces. Maybe. Just sit in the silence for a minute. Goodness me. I think I did alright running through chat. I think it was a dead sprint, but I think I did alright. All things considered.
Yeah.
don't think I did terrible. Most understand how the electron and light are both a particle and a wave. Okay? He was crucified, man. This is historical. Isaiah, Jeremiah, etc. were written 400 plus years prior. Josephus confirms crucified and risen Christ. No, he doesn't. Outside the Bible, no, he doesn't. The extra biblical sources claim all the extra biblical sources like Josephus, Tacitus, just like, hey, I heard a story about this dude that did this thing. It doesn't. It's not like eyewitness testimony. It's not secondhand testimony even. It doesn't really give credibility to any of the supernatural claims of the Bible. It's just like, hey, I heard this story about this dude. It might lend credibility to the existence of a dude named Jesus, which I don't have any issues with the idea that a dude named Jesus, or whatever the actual name would have been, existed, gained a following, made some claims, gained a following, and got executed. I have no problem believing in that. It happens. But as far as the supernatural aspects, we really don't have anything for. Matter is a direct protrusion from higher dimensional principles. Maybe. The electron already exists in the higher dimension and in the physical partially. Maybe. That's way over my head. Quantum physics and stuff is way over my head. Personally. But, it's cool that you're learning it. I think it's cool stuff to learn and know. I should probably hop on that train too. It's like a hologram. It's not way over your head. It's a little way over my head. Just not quite, don't quite understand quantum mechanics and whatnot. Understanding is visually is different than understanding it mathematically. Maybe. Right. Play with it in your mind. Might have to. With that, I do think I'm going to go ahead and end this live stream. Thank you so much for a good and engaging chat. I'm always appreciative when anyone gives me even 2 seconds of their time, when anyone doesn't just scroll past. I'm infinitely more grateful when someone takes the time to stay, chat, subscribe, anything. I'm a random nobody on YouTube. I'm like whatever. I'm not worth your time or anything. Don't move the stool. So the fact that people are willing to stay and chat with me is amazing. So thank you so much. We had some good questions. We had some good discussions in the chat, and I hope we can keep getting that. And I didn't fall behind on chat. I was able to sprint through. When I did fall behind, I was able to sprint through. I didn't really have to skip. I kind of skimmed through some of the one word or one sentence things. It was whatever. But yeah. I usually go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night at about 9 to 9:30-ish p.m. Central Standard Time, and I hope to see you all in the future. So have an amazing rest of your night. Have an amazing rest of your night, day, whenever you're watching this. Bye.